2, 3, 4. All right. Okay, here we go. I've never done this solo, so this is going to be a very interesting show. I have my dogs here, so just fair warning, if they start coming in here and whining and whatever, then that's gonna might interrupt the flow. So I've got the chat going. I have finally gotten off my ass and decided to do an AMA. I have not done an AMA in a very long time. Not with an interview, and certainly not with Reddit, because the subreddit for the red pill is now quarantined. So the last time I did a AMA was on the red pill subreddit, and God, I almost want to say it was like a year and a half ago. I think I did it in maybe 2016. So anyways, got my new mic going here. So I'm still kind of working out the bugs with it. I think I might move it onto the other side here, just because I always like leaning over here so I can talk onto this thing. So anyways, yeah, thanks. I have the chat window going up, so this is just going to be kind of like a candid AMA for anybody. I have one really good question that I kind of want to start off with, and so I'm going to do that. But before I get too wrapped up in this, I want to sort of give you guys an explanation as to why I'm not doing the red pill and religion right now. I had Dr. Paul Maxwell lined up to sort of kick off this new show that I want to call the Red Pill and Religion. And I'm not going to just limit it to Christianity. I'd like to open it up to other religions as well, but I want to start with Christianity. And I want to kind of start a dialogue, because I've got a fourth book that's coming out, and it is called The Red Pill and Religion, or that's the working title anyways. I'm not married to that just yet. So I'm going to be talking about religion, not necessarily today, but I want to start a show that at least explores some of those topics. I'm not trying to convert anybody one way or the other. I just want to, like I said, start a discussion about the interactivity, I guess, between red pill awareness, red pill thought, and different religions. Unfortunately, Dr. Maxwell decided that he did not want to appear, didn't want to come on. So there's a story behind that, but I don't think I'm going to get in too deep into it right now. But anyways, so that left me a slot open here, and I've been promising you guys an AMA for a very long time. So here we go. I will take questions from the chat, but before you start coming up with them, I'm going to read this one that I just got. I got this. I'm just going to keep it anonymous. Okay. The guy says, "Hello, Rollo. I love your job." I love my job too. I've just finished preventive medicine, and I think I have a confirmation I need to break up with my LTR, long-term relationship, with my girlfriend of 9 years. I'm 27 and she's 26. Okay, so let's hold on right there for just a second. A 9-year relationship, and he's 27. How old was he when he got with this girl? 18, right? Yeah, I think I'm right. 27. About 18, 19, somewhere around there. Okay. And she is 26, because she is killing my potential. Well, you've been with her for 9 years, so that is definitely killing your potential. The problem is, we are all right. We live together. Mistake right there. We are stable. Well, good. She wants to have kids. Of course she does. She's 26. She's entering into her epiphany phase. But I don't feel ready. Of course you don't, because you have not hit your sexual market value peak. But I just feel I'm losing too many things because of her. Not just sex with other women, but business experiences, friends, a better version of myself. The big problem with me is, how is the best way to deal with this? She is not a bad woman, and it breaks my heart thinking about doing this, apart from the typical fears of regretting, which are now, I think this guy's, pretty sure this guy's first language isn't English. I know are irrational. I know it's up to me with your knowledge and experience. any way of making this easier. No, there's no real way to make it easier. Again, you kind of have to start at the basis here. The guy is clearly talking about a woman that he probably got with during his high school years. Again, I think the guy might be from India or somewhere else around there, Central Asia or something. I can't really tell from the name. But anyways, high school, we're talking an adolescent social skill set, and that's what these guys, they end up getting to a point where they're later on in their lives. Remember, your 20s are really your prime years as a guy. And I don't mean that like maybe success wise, but certainly learning wise and opportunity wise. You are, relatively in your prime. I like to say that your men's sexual market value tends to be around 36 or 37, but that doesn't mean that you don't have any value when you're in your 20s. You certainly do. And I think that is the time when men need to be building themselves. They need to be working on the foundation of what's going to come for them later on in life. And if you can get to guys earlier, which I love the concept, DDJ came up with this. I love the concept of multi-generational mentoring. And I think that that's something that red pill guys need to avail themselves of. I think we need to be a little bit more, out forthcoming, I guess, with not so much advice, but just sort of, helping the next generations along. And this kind of goes to that. But so you're looking at a guy who's maybe 18 or 19 years old when he meets with her. He's 27 right now, and he's just realizing, he's coming to the point where he has the insight to know that he's missed out. He's missed out on a lot of things. Maybe he's limited himself. I think a lot of, particularly women love to make it all about the sex. They like to say that, well, you guys just want variety. And there's some truth to that. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely truth to guys wanting to unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. That's the male biological imperative. But there's other things that you miss out on too if you are shacked up. Just like I said, he's already broken at least a couple of iron rules. The main one being that he moved in with this girl. Again, they've been together since high school, so probably still relating to each other with what I call the adolescent social skill set. I guess I could get into that a little bit too, but anyways, I think he probably is very much in love with her. She's probably not the same girl that he knew back in the day. She might have been thinner and hotter and funner back then, and now things are starting to look like it's time to start a family and it's time to play house. And maybe he's been playing house because it didn't say that they were married. But when you move in with a woman, you end up losing a lot of your freedom, a lot of your ability to maneuver. Thanks for that $10 chat. I'll get to you in just a second. But you lose your capacity to maneuver. The things that you could be doing were you single are unavailable to you. And it's not just other chicks. It's not just banging as many girls as you can get to. Now this is my show. I can say fuck if I want to. And so, guys will get to a point where they're looking back on it and they're going, man, I could have done this, or my life could have been different if I had had the opportunity to have, well, I shouldn't say they had the opportunity. I had the chance to capitalize on a particular opportunity. Maybe that's business. Maybe that's family stuff. Maybe that's traveling. Maybe there's lots of different opportunities I can think of that would help a man become like a better version of himself, right? To grow. I think travel has a growing effect on guys. I think, learning certain disciplines, certainly the military. There's lots of ways in which a guy grows during his 20s. If you decided that you wanted to settle down and play house at 19, and now you're 27 and you're looking back on all your life that could have been, that's something of almost like a midlife crisis, only you're having it a little bit earlier now. And I don't really believe in midlife crises. I think that they are really kind of midlife epiphanies, which is what this guy is having right now. He's looking back on, the last probably 9 years of being with her, and is not seeing the benefit for having been with her. Now, he's not married, so he can still get out. has no kids, and I think that's probably part of it. But my advice to this guy is to be very, very careful, and when it comes to relating any of this to his girlfriend. What most women in this situation will do is they will attempt to trap a guy. They'll attempt to trap him with an accidental pregnancy, and just to lock the guy down, assuming that that's what she wants to do. She's talking about having kids and becoming a little bit more domestic. I don't know what their background is as far as their work and what their relationship entails, but according to what he says, it's pretty good. So I would be very careful if the guy decides to exit the relationship. If he was going to eject, I would say do so, first of all, on your terms, and then be very careful about how you do that, because this is the time where it gets really dangerous. Like I said, a woman might want to lock you down with a kid. She might try to, she might change herself and her personality a little bit more to accommodate what she thinks it is that you want, and to become a person that she believes that she could be for you, but temporarily enough to lock you down and get you into a very long-term relationship. I don't know, maybe I'm weird this way. A lot of chicks give me shit for this, and a lot of tradcons give me shit for this, but I think that it behooves a guy to have certainly more than one sex partner in their life. I think that there is a degree of experience that you have to have with women to really understand the female nature. And I was just reading a thing on Twitter. I forget who it was. Maybe it was Rich. I think Rich said something like, he said, where do you think, or after how many, what's your notch count? At which notch count do you think the understanding of women comes into play? And then it was like 1 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, something like that, or maybe even more than that. I would like to say that's right around 10. I'm not saying you have to go out and be a man whore to understand women, but I think that men need to at least have some experience of multiple women to really get an idea of what, you're definitely going to end up having some bad experiences, but those experiences will teach you stuff. Like when I had my borderline personality disorder woman experience, that taught me a lot about myself, and that brought me to a place I never want to go again. And I'm glad I can talk about that now, and I can impart this on to everybody else. But I think that guys need to experience more women. That's why I say spin more plates, keep your options open and available to you. Certainly don't lock yourself down into an LTR at 19 years old. Most guys end up getting a really hard lesson from trying to keep that relationship together. And so what they do is they end up going to whatever college their girlfriend decides that she wants to go to, and they end up changing careers. They end up leaving their families, or maybe like moving closer to her family, because she's of course in control of the frame. There's lots and lots of ways that guys can miss out on really living their full potential, because they believe in this really monogamous one girl forever mindset too early on. I'm not saying that's a bad idea. I'm not saying monogamy is a bad idea. I'm just saying that men need to have that experience and need to have sort of a more well-rounded thing. At least if they're going to talk about, like, I know guys who married their high school sweethearts, right? And they don't know any better, so ignorance is bliss, right? So they don't know anything. But like, I think there's a demographic of men. I think Pat Campbell sent me a group of links about the statistics for Christian men who were addicted to pornography, and it was somewhere in the range of like 90 some odd percent, maybe a little over 90%. And these are guys who say, "Oh, I have a sex addiction. I'm addicted to porn. I can't stop watching porn," or maybe they just watch porn and they think they have an addiction because it's not something in the religion that is tolerated, right? And I think that the reason that guys like that tend to feel more guilt or more shame or more I don't know, conviction, I guess, for watching porn or feeling bad about what, for having watched it, is because they are only limited to one woman, and so their sexual needs have to be taken care of by that single woman. And she's got to be, the best porn star and the best sex he's ever had, because that's all the sex he's ever going to have. And so when you take those guys into the internet age and you have free online ubiquitous porn everywhere, it becomes something of an addiction, I guess. I think it becomes something that they feel very guilty about, because they know that the only experience that they're ever going to have is going to be with their wives. Okay, let's see. You know what? Conk, I like that. Conk. $10 super chat. Thank you very much. I will get to yours in just a moment. There was one that was right before yours, and here it is. William Pasilis, I think that's it. Can any credibility be given to a woman who says she needs to fix herself if she got out of a traumatic relationship? Appreciate the thoughts and wisdoms. Okay, I've heard that before. Really, what I think that is kind of a filibuster. I need to fix myself is kind of like, oh, I'm not the best version. I'm not who I need to be or where I need to be. This is kind of medium is the message. When women say I need to fix myself or I need to work on myself, usually that means that she doesn't see herself with you. That's a one more way of saying, can we just be friends? And so I take that for what it is. I think a lot of guys, I've gotten into this topic before, a lot of guys think that persistence is something that they should, an ideal of persistence is something that they should pursue with women. And that kind of goes almost completely against the idea of, like, say, mode one, which is just, pragmatically be straight up and above board the whole time, and just to be pragmatic about it, right? I mean, so you're not wasting your time. Well, when a woman says, I need to work on myself, she's basically blowing you off. And I think that she can say that, I need to work on myself or whatever. I mean, I would venture to guess that a woman who is saying something like that is probably in her epiphany phase. I really want to do a show with Pat about some of these more basic concepts, like the epiphany phase. I keep referring back to that, and I think that unless you read the books or you read I've got three different essays on the epiphany phase for women. You're never going to understand that. Maybe if you read preventive medicine, there's a whole timeline on preventive medicine for how you can sort of predict basically where a woman is going to be and what her priorities are going to be as far as her sex life and her sexual strategy is at a particular time in her life. I would suggest that a woman saying that she is fixing herself is usually one that wants to convince a guy or convince herself, because she's not just convincing men, she's convincing herself that she needs to get off of the carousel, get out of the sexual marketplace, and sort of slow down and settle down on one guy. And that's really hard for them to do at that time. So that to me sounds like her id is kind of conflicting with her ego at that point. She wants the alpha dude, and she wants to get back with the guy that probably hurt her. Like, when I've heard stuff like this, I'm going to be, this is all conjecture, but when I've heard filibusters like this from women, it's usually because they got really burned on an alpha guy that they are alpha widowed by. Like, they really wanted to get with this guy, and they really were hoping it was going to work out. She's going to lock him down, and Jane was going to tame Tarzan, and they were going to live happily ever after. And she got burned. And so when she gets to, say, 27, 28, 29 years old, that's when women really kind of have that come to Jesus moment with themselves, in that they have to really acknowledge that they are coming to a point in their lives where they're no longer able to compete with other women, and they're no longer able to draw the same attention from the alpha men that might have hurt them, but they're still not able to keep that going and indefinitely. And so they know that once, and then people say, well, this is when the wall hits, Rollo. No, this is not when the wall hits. The wall hits when a woman understands, or she acknowledges that she can no longer compete with her younger sisters or her younger self. So what I mean by that is, like, when a woman gets to say 32 years old, and that's kind of old for an epiphany phase, but let's just say for sake of argument, she gets to be 32 years old and she goes through the epiphany phase, and she's hitting the wall at 32, not because she's ugly, not because she might not still go to the gym or whatever. It's because in her head, she acknowledges that the 32-year-old version of her cannot compete with the 22-year-old version of her. That's when she hits the wall. That's when she says, I need to settle down. I need to get right with God. I need to do these things that are going to make me more I don't know, marketable for a better provider. I'm done with those assholes. I'm done with those guys. And part of that might be a woman saying, I need to work on myself. Work on yourself means that I need to enter into it at the epiphany phase, and I need to get a better grip on my life going forward past, say, 30 years old. Let's see, what else do we have? I have Conk on here, but Conk, you gave me another one before that, so let's see. Here we go. Okay. Sorry, this is actually, that's not Conk, is it? Okay, here's Conk. Conk says, I agree that the modern church culture is very blue pill in message, but the Bible itself shows much more red pill, or reads much more red pill. Do you have advice for Bible believers who want to separate from the beta church? Yes, I do. In fact, that's a good portion of what book 4 is going to be about. I have I'll put it in the description below, because I didn't put any links. I'm like, maybe I put a couple. But I have a post called Losing My Religion, and I describe this in a lot of detail as to how I believe that how women have pretty much assimilated, or I should say the feminine imperative has assimilated the modern church. And I don't just mean that in terms of the evangelical church, which is one area that I'm going to focus on, but I would say Catholics, to an extent, even Mormons. There are women in the Mormon church right now who want to institute some sort of new rules for them to be part of the clergy, or part of whatever that is. Leadership of some sorts. It's almost like feminism trying to get into it. You will see that in the Islam, but you will see that in more westernized countries of Islam. I'm not saying like the other countries. I'm just like, like Saudi Arabia. Like you could say, well, they're still, Islam makes them wear the hijab, but yet what do you see in, like, say, a place like Iran, where women are trying to like risk their lives so that they don't have to wear the hijab? That to me is Western feminism that has found its way into an Islamic culture. So I would say that the feminine imperative has more or less gotten into most, unless it's an extremely orthodox religion, I think it has kind of wormed its way into religion, and in no other religion is it more obvious than evangelical Christianity. Evangelical Christianity is what I call beta farm. Usually, I was going to talk about this today anyways, with Dr. Maxwell, but men are leaving the church in record numbers, and most millennials don't. They say, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, right? I mean, that's the claim, is that they still want to feel in some way, have a metaphysical belief, but they don't want to belong to organized religion. But what I see in the evangelical church is I see that the men that are in that church don't come in from the outside. They were raised in that church. They were brought up because they had religious parents that went to church, and they raised them as whatever franchise of Christianity that they ended up being. And so as a part of that, now you have to hear me out on this. When it comes to feminism, when it comes to the feminine imperative in the church, there's 3 things that you have to watch for. The way that feminism changes faith is this. And this is going to be in the book too, so you get a spoiler alert here. In church culture is informed by secular culture. It's informed by the outside, the world, the outside world. It's informed by whatever is fun and whatever is hip in the outside world. Most Christian franchises will take something that is secular, or it's humanist, or it's sinful, or it's something that like the culture has created, Like a really good example is this is like heavy metal music. I can remember back in the 80s and I was listening to heavy metal, and then all of a sudden I would say probably like, I don't know, maybe 4 years in, now there's Striper, right? Now Striper is cool and it's okay because it's Christianized heavy metal, right? And so you got metal that was supposed to be the worst music you could listen to because it would turn you into a devil worshiper. And then, but it's okay as long as these guys over here dressed like bumblebees are singing about Jesus, right? So that's okay. So, but that's one illustration of how Christian culture makes something Christian kosher, right? When I was working in the liquor industry, one of the things I work with a lot of Jews in the industry, and what they always wanted to do was get the vodka brands that we had to be kosher. And really, the process was just sending a sample to a rabbi who would check it out. I guess I don't know what they do, shalom aleichem or whatever, and they then give the blessing, and they get a little stamp that says this is kosher approved, so that Orthodox Jews can drink our vodka. I don't know why vodka would be unorthodox to begin with, but there you go. Christians have a different way of doing that. They will take whatever is cool and try to incorporate it into their sermonizing or into their church culture. So as long as it has the Jesus Fish logo stamped on the shirt, then this shirt's okay. This is a Christian shirt, or these are Christian glasses, or these are Christian headphones. As long as it's got the okay, it's really kind of a niche marketing thing. That's one of the things I learned when I was working, and well, I still am working, but when I started working in brand management and art direction and stuff, is that there's a lot of people sell a lot of the same things. It's just that they have their own little niche. So you can just sell to Jews, or you can just sell to Christians, or you can just sell to Muslims, or you can just like, there's these little subcultures that become their own kind of niche markets already. And I see that with the feminine imperative. And what I see happen is that a lot of this stuff, a lot of this feminist ideology and a lot of this feminized school of thought sort of comes out, but Christian women don't want to have anything to do with it. They don't. If you ask any Christian woman, you say, "Are you a feminist?" They'll go, "No, hell no. I don't. I don't have blue hair. I don't grow my under armpit hair. I don't. They don't want to be part of the dirty hippies, but yet they still subscribe to feminine primary thought. They want to still fight for women's rights, but we're going to stamp the Christian fish on it so that is Christian kosher. So now feminism, 4 or 5, 10 years later, comes around and it says, you know what, we should have femininity. I think Jesus was actually a feminist. Let's put a Christian kosher, punk. And now Christian kosher feminism comes into church culture, and it becomes part of that. And as church culture sort of develops, then that we should advance women. Me Too is another thing that's just come into evangelical Christian culture, courtesy of like Beth Moore and some of these other women's ministries speakers, because they're not teachers, right? They're speakers. So what happens is that secular cultural influence comes into the church culture influence. And then what happens after that is that church is forced to change its doctrine to accommodate that church culture. So the practices of that church align with the church culture that has been influenced by secular culture. And so what happens is all of these doctrines start sort of presenting themselves, and this is just the way we do it. Because remember, that's doctrine. Is when you're in a church, it's just how we do things here. The doctrine of Baptists is different from the doctrine of Methodists, which is different from the doctrine of whatever. And so what happens is those cultural norms become doctrinal norms, and then given about 1 or 2 generations, once you're bringing up your son, and then your son's son, and then maybe your son's son's son, in that church, what happens is that doctrine then changes the faith. So we look for ways to reinterpret the Bible to accommodate the doctrine that has been changed by feminism, which was then in turn changed by the culture, the church culture, and then the church culture, of course, was changed by secularism. So what happens is these guys are brought up in all of this. So you've got if you're a man in church today and you're still actually part of church, you were probably, like I said, you're probably brought up in church. Very few men find their way into church just on their own, unless they have some real spiritual need to find it. Most other men are brought to church by their wives because their wives were religious. They married a guy and they says, "Oh, you gotta, come on, honey, you gotta go to church. You gotta go to church." And so that's what they end up doing, and maybe they get involved in it. Maybe they have a belief. I'm not one of the things I have to be really careful about, particularly with this book, and whenever I'm talking about religion, is belief is a very personal thing. That's why I don't talk about my own faith or my own religion very often, because I don't want that to in any way um, be part of my red pill message. That's why I don't talk about it when I'm on the Red Man group. I will talk about religion when it crosses over into intersectional dynamics. Same thing with race, same thing with politics, that kind of stuff. But I'm never just about politics. I'm never just about race. I'm never just about whatever. I'm never going to. One of the reasons, like, I think a lot of people got turned off to Royce right around 2009, 2010, is because he went really hard on the race and the politics. And when his main audience was really coming there for the game, they were coming there for the red pill intersexual dynamics side of things, and they really liked that. And then it kind of got turned off to that. I think I sort of my blog sort of presented a better option for guys who just wanted to talk about game or just wanted to talk about red pill stuff or what would become red pill stuff. So there you have it. Do I have any advice for believers who want to separate from the beta church? Well, I was actually going to talk about that today, but I think that maybe I'll save that question for when I do start the Religion and Red Pill podcast, or that show. Actually, this is my podcast, right? I think that there, so I'm not leaving you completely hanging. There is a necessity for guys to break away from the feminine created church and to start something on their own. And that's really hard for guys to do, because most guys aren't, I mean, unless you're really devoted to your religion, and you want to, have a more conventionally masculine religion. Like we just were talking about the APA ruling about how toxic or traditional masculinity is toxic masculinity. So you got an uphill battle when people already think that just because you're leaving the church to start another church that's based on conventional traditional masculinity, they're going to think that it's based on misogyny. And that's going to be something that you're going to have to fight against. But if you are, if you are really convicted, if you have a real strong personal belief in your God and your religion and the way you were brought up or whatever, you are going to have to fight for that this day. And it's like, we always say that, right? Oh, you got to go fight for what you believe in, right? If you're a guy and this is what you want to do, you want to break away and you want to start your own church, you have a very uphill battle, because well, first of all, just the zeitgeist of the times right now is very pro-feminine, and you're going to be fighting the idea that what you want to do, if you want to reinstate patriarchy, if you want to take women's rights away and you want to take away their right to vote, hey man, good on you. I can totally understand why you would want to do that, but understand you have a very uphill battle for something like that. And that same could be said for guys who want to sort of reinvigorate their religion with some real conventional masculinity. You're going to meet a lot of pushback. Let's see. Ravicus. The thing is it makes me wonder, like, how people decide on what their online moniker is going to be. I mean, people probably know the story about my name, but people always ask, say, Rollo, why do you just use Rollo as your name? Why don't you go back and use your real name? Well, first of all, it's like who I am now. And then second of all, it's well, if you haven't figured it out, it's from L.A. Confidential, which is a movie from 1997. It had Russell Crowe in it, had Guy Pearce, had Kim Basinger, it had Danny DeVito, a bunch of, and Kevin Spacey was in it too. It was a really, really great all-star cast. It was a fantastic movie, but it was a really good kind of gumshoe murder mystery thing that was really good. I'm not going to spoil it for you. Go watch it, and then you'll understand where I got my name from. But yeah, it makes me wonder, like, well, how do people think of this kind of shit? Okay, so Ravika says, in a few days, I'll turn 50. Oh, happy birthday. Never been married. Recently found your work, became red pill aware. It's life-changing. Any thoughts on dating after 50, on building a family in later in life? Ooh, well, you got an uphill battle too. Any thoughts? I counsel a guy right now. Hello, Mike, if you're watching. He is 56, I think, is how old he is right now, and he's just getting back into the dating market now. He got divorced, so it's not like he hasn't ever been married before. But I think that one thing you need to watch out for is that the dating landscape is nowhere near what it used to be when you were 25 years old. We didn't have Twitter, or Twitter. We didn't have Tinder back then, and I think that a lot of guys, when they get back into the dating market, maybe they're 45, 55 years old, they think that Tinder is the way that they're going to go and meet women because they want to get back into circulation, rather than really kind of backing up off of it and deciding like, hey, maybe I need to get to the gym, maybe I need to take some time away, maybe I need to really kind of sort out my thoughts and figure out what it is that I want from life going forward. I've got another guy who is 70 years old who was red pilled. Okay, I hate saying red pill, it's not a verb. He became red pill aware, and was kind of looking back on his life, and I really feel for him. It's tough, man, when you get to be a certain age. You get to be 50, and then you get to look back on your life, and you could look at all of the decisions that you made because you were that beta person. I was just talking about this with Pat Campbell. Looking on that beta life and looking at the decisions and looking how you got to where you are because you made bad decisions based on your beta beliefs, and look at where you are now. I know. What's some good tips for a guy who's dating after 50? Know what you want, first of all. And that sounds like really kind of a half-assed answer, but it's true, because if you just want to spin plates, then know that that's what you're going after. If you're actually looking for something in the long term, also understand that assuming you're good looking and you've got money in the bank, and assuming you're a better judge of character, intrinsically and extrinsically, you have to look at what you have that is valuable, and then make sure that you understand that you're the prize in that. Date younger. Don't date your peers. Don't date older. Date younger. You have the capacity to do that. I'm not saying you have to go and pick up a 18-year-old cheerleader or something like that. I am saying that you need to oh, my dogs are right here. That you need to date somewhat younger. I would say at least you're 50, I would say probably anywhere from 40 to 35 would be the best for you. So anyways, I'm going to keep going on here. I'm going to do a show with I want to see Henry. Henry's right here. Let's see him. I'm going to do a show with I'm going to join Rich tomorrow on his Avoiding the Train Wreck show. I'm filling in for Sean tomorrow. So I would, what I would say, get that question in on that show tomorrow, and me and Rich will answer it. Let's see. Okay, Conk, thank you for that $5. What did you say? Damn, man, no. People think I'm ignoring them. I'm not ignoring you. Let's see. It's just I can't keep up with all this stuff. Who knew I was going to be able to keep up with this shit? Okay. Conk says, I will be starting a YouTube soon for Red Pill Theology. Got some support from Modern Life Dating and Man Mindset. I'd love to talk more about it. Okay, fine. Yeah, just hit me up. My DMs are open, by the way. In hormonal, it's not hormonally. CJ Carlton, thank you for the $10 super chat. Says, in hormonal, Dr. Marty Hasselton argues for the creation of a Darwinian feminism that acknowledges and defends hypergamy. TRP, or the red pill, would be a productive dialogue with such feminism. My thoughts. Okay, there's a couple of things. I think that Dr. Marty Hasselton is easily the the research woman that I have quoted the most when it comes to her research, and when it comes to what evolutionary psychology, and really how it dovetails with the red pill, with red pill thought. A lot of the ideas that I have sort of developed myself about hypergamy have come from her ovulatory shift research. And let's just say right now, that's 25 years of ovulatory shift research. It's not just something that happened yesterday. And I really, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with Marty. I mean, she's actually a cute girl, but she has to fight feminism herself, and so to fight feminism, she becomes feminism. And if you read Hormonal, she stumbles all over herself in trying to sort of establish this feminist street cred. She wants to, she throws in, you know, all these asides and all these, you know, just it makes me wonder if she didn't have like a ghostwriter, if she had somebody co-author it with her, because it just does not sound like her, particularly from a woman who has devoted most of her life at UCLA to the study of, you know, intersexual dynamics, according to evolutionary psychology. So, but I have a love-hate relationship with her because it seems like she's trying to cozy up to feminists who don't like her. They don't like her because what she says offends feminist sensibilities. It offends the idea that the blank slate upon which gender equality is based on, right? Everybody has to be the same, and gender has to be a social construct if feminism is to work, if that intersectional feminism is to work. And so she tries to cozy up to them because they have actually protested her. Feminists have actually protested Marty Hasselton, and at least in the past. I don't know if they're doing it after the book, but in the past they've had a real tough time with the truth, especially when she's talking about alpha fucks and beta bucks. If you want some good research on alpha fucks and beta bucks, that she's the one to talk to. I don't think that a dialogue about anything regarding feminism is a good idea. I think that what she was saying about, okay, like a Darwinian feminism, okay, Darwinian feminism is polyandry, and I just wrote about this not too long ago in The New Polyandry. It's an essay on my blog right now, and in it, I explained that we used to, it was Dr. Marty Hasselton reading her stuff, and then I also read this thing in The Economist, this research paper in The Economist about, it was studying countries that had institutionalized polygamy and how they were more predisposed to war because of the fact that, like, say because in those cultures, you can only have sex if you're married, or it's only the only legitimate sex anyways. And the only way you can get married is if you have money, and if you have some way to exchange. It's all transactional, right? You can exchange some kind of resources to a man, so he'll sell you his daughter so you can have a family. Well, that means that the wealthier men can have 4 or 5 wives, and the rest of the guys, that means 4 or 5, well, it means 5 or 6 other guys aren't getting married. So sorry, my dog's bugging me right now. Henry, go out. And so anyways, so what that does is that predisposes those countries to civil unrest, because what happens is the guys who don't have access to wives and don't have access to any kind of sexuality end up killing each other, because that's, I mean, if you look at it this way, like if you take something like Boko Haram went and kidnapped like 300 and some odd girls. And of course, there's this big public outcry over that, like, oh, give us back our girls. I mean, I think Michelle Obama was coming up with some hashtag, bring us back our girls. What Boko Haram is doing is taking those kids, those young girls, and using them as brides. That's payoff for the guys who will come and pull a trigger for them. And this is really kind of a rough way of saying that in those countries, in those particular ideologies, in those religions, in those cultures of polygamy, they are more prone to war. When we talk about enforced monogamy means that the beta guys can get with more women. They can get, there's one where, you probably heard this, it's a Disney fantasy. There's someone out there for everyone, right? That's monogamy. That's ideal monogamy, is that there's some perfect soulmate that's out there for every guy and every girl. There's a pair, because there's this thing called soulmates, and soulmates coming together and they last forever, and Disney dreams really do come true, right? All of that comes from the idea of there being one person for another person somewhere out there in the world. That's a fantasy based on monogamy, which, to its credit, monogamy has been the really kind of the outline for modern marriage, of course, but for the family unit, the nuclear family. And that pushes the idea that betas need to be able to ensure or have some sort of security that their genes are going to go on to the next generation, and they don't have to fight against alpha fucks, beta bucks, because left to their own devices, in a natural state, in a pre-agrarian state, hypergamy is, many women focusing on a few men, like the top 20% of these 20% of men and women desire those guys. 80% are the ones that OkCupid says that women think are unattractive. So there's the 80-20 rule. And so what happens then is women are going for those guys, right? Well, we're kind of entering a phase, I think, after the sexual revolution. We're kind of regressing into a phase that is almost a pre-agrarian intersexual dynamics. It is now a polygamy, but is a polygamy of women. And so when women can have the beta buck side of their hypergamy pretty much insured, then the only thing that's left is alpha fucks. And so that's what they focus on. And that's what men focus on too. That's why you hear about like looks maxing, and I think it was it's funny, they asked, I think, 50 guys, 50 CEOs in Forbes magazine not too long ago, and they said, what is, you've got all this money, right? What does a guy with your kind of money want in life? And damn near every one of them said, I want a six-pack, I want, or like a six-pack abs, I want a better body, I want a better physique. They weren't saying, oh, I want to go and create a new product or innovate better or do something with my business. It was, I want to look better, because they understand that side of the beta buck side of hypergamy has already been taken care of, and they're adapting to that new sexual marketplace. And in that, we see a new form of polyandry, and that's what the whole piece was about, was polyandry, and how that it's a polyandry, but it's based on women's unfettered hypergamy. So if we're already ensuring beta bucks and beta provisioning through direct or indirect resources from men or the state or special dispensation or Title IX or all of these fempowerment programs, if that takes care of that side of hypergamy, the only thing that's left is alpha fucks, and that's what women focus on. And so, but the point I'm making here is that they if they're focusing on that alpha fucks all the time, then what happens is you have many women sharing the top 20% of guys, and that's how the polyandry comes into effect. So it's like women themselves are creating will be, if they aren't already, well, I guess they kind of are. They kind of are when you think about the poly lifestyle right now. But it's many women sharing one or two or three or whatever, the very few of the highest alphas, of the guys that are the apex. And because they don't need to, they don't need to go after betas anymore. They don't need to go after provisioning. They don't need to go after, they don't even really care about emotional security right now, because they have social media to take care of that emotional security. So there's so much satisfaction of the beta bucks provisioning side of everything, that there is almost a much more intense stress of alpha fucks these days. So would I, and I can see, maybe I'm totally off base on this, CJ, sorry, but what I see as far as a Darwinian feminism is concerned, is feminism is always concerned about supremacy. It is always female supremacism. It is always about, it's never been about equality. It has only ever been about restitution and retribution. They wanted, women to this day still want to right, quote unquote, right the wrongs that they've had throughout history or something, and whether or not were oppressed or they weren't oppressed. And I won't get into any detail on that because I think Jordan Peterson's probably picked that one up for years to come. But I think that anything that would have the name feminism tagged to it is always going to serve the interests of women. Otherwise, it would be called equalism, right? And they couldn't sell equalism, so they have to call it feminism. All right. Sorry, I'm trying not to miss out on everybody's stuff here. Yes, I really do. I like Slayer. Do I like ABBA? Yeah. See, what else do we got going on here? Okay, there's another super chat. Sorry, I don't mean not to just, I'm trying to get everybody's in here, but this is going to be bloody impossible. I got a lot of people on here. How to balance women and chasing my goals. I want to sleep with as many women as I can, but my life is shit. So should I leave women alone for now? Right. Not enough information on that one. Thanks for the chat, though. Okay. Okay, here we go. Redman Anon. Thank you. I think I know this guy. Our chicks in the epiphany phase, a weaker in the epiphany, a weaker in a okay. Our chicks in the epiphany phase in a weaker position to choose from, since their choice comes from a lack of time instead of truly wanting to be with the guy. Which phase did you meet your wife in? Just curious. I met my wife probably right around the epiphany phase. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I met her right around the epiphany phase. And so is she in a weaker position? Yeah, definitely. And I think women's hindbrain really acknowledges that. That's why they make up rationales. That's why we talk about the women's hamster. That's why they come up with ideas to rationalize away why they're making the decisions that they are at that moment. And guys, whatever's going to get us laid is fine. So we'll just go along with it, right? So I want to work on myself, right? We were just talking about, I want to work on myself. I'm just not the right person. I want to get right with God. I want to do this right. And so these are the same girls that will, have sex on the first night with the hot guy in the foam cannon party in Cancun on spring break. And then they're become the girl that says, I'm going to make him wait because I don't want him to think I'm easy. I'm going to make him wait because I think he is boyfriend material, or he could be a good dad. He has parental investment potential. And so the sex that they would give to a hot alpha guy, like no questions asked right there at the moment, because she was drunk and he was cute and one thing led to another. That what you see in the epiphany phase is kind of more of a drawn out version of that, or you see it on a meta scale. When women get into the epiphany phase, their id fights with their ego. Their id wants the hot alpha. Their id wants the guy in the foam cannon party. They want that guy who is hot and fun and exciting and dangerous and doesn't give a rat's ass about them, but he's so fun in bed and he's got 6-pack abs and he ends up becoming the alpha that they become widowed by. But he's never going to commit. He's never going to be, she's never going to be Jane, and he's never going to be Tarzan. It's never going to be Beauty and the Beast. She's not going to tame the beast. So she's like, okay, I'm not getting any younger. I think that there is a biological clock in women, but I don't think it is when people think that it is, like, biologically. I think it comes a lot earlier, but women ignore it because they want to have fun and they want to explore their options, and hypergamy is based on doubt, and so they want to keep trying to find the next right guy, and that's why they end up freezing their eggs and being cat ladies later on. But that's neither here nor there. What I was going to say is that in in the epiphany phase, a woman's id really wants to get with the alpha guy, and her ego says, no, you need to get with the beta guy who's going to be a good provider, who's going to love you, and who's going to settle down, and you guys are going to have a family, and he represents long-term security. And hopefully he's kind of cute, but we're going to rearrange our priorities. When a woman is, like, say, in her party years, she 18 to about 26 maybe, physical appeal is right up here. Physical appeal is, physical arousal. The guy's got to be hot. He's got to be cute. He's got to be fun. When the epiphany phase kicks in, provisioning tends to come above the physical, but only insofar as she can't make that happen. So are women in a weaker position? Yes, they definitely are, because again, they can't compete with their younger selves. They can't compete with younger women, and women fundamentally acknowledge this on some level of consciousness. I think that they honestly, I think women really, when they're from the time they're very young, I think really right around puberty, like when girls realize that boys will act stupid for them and will do whatever they want to for them because they just want to get with them. And they start to realize that sexual agency, that all I have to do is look good, and I have to be flirty, and boys will do whatever I want them to. They understand that from very early age, that they have that kind of power. And then when they get to the epiphany phase and they see that power kind of fading. Now, this is just like the average woman. I'm not taking a big fat chick is not going to be able to realize this as well as, say, a good looking, thin girl. But they begin to understand that they can't play the same game that they've been playing, because their capacity to turn a trick, so to speak, isn't as well as it used to be. And she can't depend on getting a guy to commit who would be her physical ideal. And so the id and the ego kind of war with each other. And in that warring comes all of these rationales, which is, I got to get right with God. I've learned my lesson. I don't want to deal with those bad boys anymore. I was so wild, but I'm not like that anymore. I used to be so wild in college, and I used to do so much. I had a 3-way with my best friend in college, but boy, I'm really not into giving blowjobs. I'm not a sexual person anymore. And really what that is when a woman puts you off sexually from that perspective, she's doing so because her id doesn't want her ego to win. Her ego says, we have to have sex with this guy, even though he's not as exciting and not as fun, because in the long term, he's going to be a better prospect than these other guys. Well, the id doesn't want that. And we always talk about how women don't really mature past, I say mature, they don't. I think what we talked about this when we were talking about morals and agency on the Red Man group, about how women don't mature morally past like stage 3. Like there's 6 stages, and men usually only get to 4 or 5, but women rarely get past 3. And that third level is kind of like that responsible teenager, level. And so anyways, I don't know where I'm going with that, but as far as the epiphany phase is concerned, yes, women are at a much greater disadvantage, and then the further they age, the more disadvantaged that disadvantage becomes real to them. So what happens is they socially, because we live in a feminine primary social order, there are what I call social conventions that come to sort of that are in place to ease that transition. So it sounds like it's prudence for a woman to say, you know what, I'm done with the bad boys. And maybe she actually feels that way. People think that it's not like some big duplicitous lie. She might actually feel that way, but the reason she feels that way is because her hindbrain acknowledges that she can no longer compete on the same level that she used to before. And so maybe that prompts her to feel like she really should be, doing something. I'm not saying that the feeling isn't real. I'm just saying that feeling is inspired by circumstances that her subconscious realizes. So yes, she would definitely be at a disadvantage. I probably spent too much time on that. Bill Arms, hey Rollo, hypergamy seems to be completely unrestrained in every aspect in the times we're living in now? Do you think hypergamy will be restrained at all in any way going into the future? Gosh, I hope so. That is that. I talked about that in the new polyandry, which was the essay I was just telling you guys about. I think that we are going to at least experiment with polyandry, a female controlled version of polyandry, meaning that women will normalize the idea of sharing an alpha. I've always said this is that women would rather share an alpha, successful alpha, than be saddled with a faithful loser, a faithful beta. And this is that saying really comes from the fact that women will, if the guy is high enough value, and remember, they're only focusing on that top 10, top 20% right now. So I would say by definition it would meet that. But if that guy is a high enough alpha, women will gladly share that guy, but they'll still want to lock him down. They'll still want to pull him away, but they'll probably be more willing to accept that guy, having a girlfriend, having a side piece, as long as he has that alpha gravitas. And remember, even that alpha gravitas kind of wears off after a while. And so if the guy really pisses off the wrong girl, then she shits on the whole show and throws a Me Too allegation at him, and maybe that ruins things for the other girls. But I think that you will see that it will be socially unacceptable, or there'd be a stigma around girls who would lob a Me Too allegation at a really high alpha. And here's my example of that. Donovan Sharp and I were talking about this right after Bobby Brown had beat up on Rihanna on Twitter and on text and on IMs and stuff. Women were just saying he could beat me up anytime, and I would love for him to come over and work me, or it's like this forgiveness of this guy. You also see this in women who have hybristophilia, and I don't think that that's really a disorder. I think all women would do this. When the guys want to say, or my critics want to, or women critics want to say, well, that's just those women, they're damaged. Not all women are like that. Yes, but only women are like that. Only women go for convicted felons. Only women actually create fan clubs for men in jail who've committed murder that they want to have their babies with. So what that tells me is that that's an aspect of hypergamy, because only women are doing that. So I would definitely hope that there would be something in the future that would rein that in. I don't know what that could be. I know that MGTOWs are going to say, well, just take away women's rights. Great. I'm 100% on board with taking away women's rights. How are we going to do that? What's going to have to happen for us to take away? Well, I mean, do we take all the rights away? Do we take a little bit of the rights away? What I want to know is, how does that happen? I mean, maybe you could convince me, because I don't see that as being practical. I don't see it being practical because I think men and women are complementary to each other. And I believe that on the biological level and on the psychological level. Just the way our brains are, the architecture of our brains is complementary to each other. The weaknesses and the strengths that I have offset my wife's weaknesses and strengths. And you can see, I'll link the studies for you. They are remarkably complementary. And I have always believed that men and women are better together than they are apart. But here we are separating them more and more every day. And the biggest way we did that was introducing hormonal birth control and unfettering hypergamy back in the sexual revolution. Women like to blame it on men because they think, well, men just thought they were going to get laid all the time and they're just going to get free sex all the time. And and then, maybe men will say something like, well, if you look at the deal, it was almost like a new social contract, right? Women were supposed to still have sex with beta guys, because it's what's on the inside that counts. I mean, that's right. When the free love generation came out, where it was right about, well, no surprise, the free love generation came right after the sexual revolution. And so let's see if I can outline this for you without making it too terribly boring. So what guys thought of, I have this series, it's actually in the third book, it's called Adaptations. I have this series called how, it was basically an outline of how guys adapted to the sexual revolution back during the free love era. And what giving women hormonal birth control, like basically unilateral control over the birth of the human birthing process, is that we say, here you go, women, here's a pill that's going to make it so you can have sex whenever you want to, and you don't have to worry about pregnancy. What are you going to do with this? Well, we gave that to them at the same time we were expanding their rights. We gave that, and then as a result of being able to vote, and as a result of the sexual revolution, I really think was the byproduct of hormonal birth control, because now as anything goes, now we can actually have sex and not have to worry about having a kid, so we can have really truly recreational sex. And then you got Woodstock, and you got the baby boomers, and you got the disco generation, and the intersexual landscape changed dramatically. I don't think people really appreciate just how catastrophic giving women hormonal birth control really was, because it was that unfettered hypergamy. Because now they didn't have to have a guy to be the provider anymore, and they didn't have to have his kid if they didn't want to have his kid. So they could still, the option was now on the table to have sex with the alphas and still get the provisioning from the betas later on. And I think that on a limbic, lizard brain level, women figured that out, that they could still go have sex with, they could still facilitate alpha fucks and beta bucks. But the rationale for that was, we're not gonna care about what's on the outside, we're gonna care about what's on the inside, and you should only be in love with that person if you have sex with that person. It has nothing to do with physical arousal, or has nothing to do with, because it's all social construct, and we're all the same, deep down inside, and all this bullshit that led up to, it just led up to this, where we're at right now with unfettering hypergamy. And now we see, as a result of that, we have free and legal abortion. We have all, or I should say, the only thing that stood in the way of really realizing unfettered hypergamy was social stigmas. So back before the sexual revolution, if a woman had a baby and she was out of wedlock, that was a horrible shame. It brought shame on the family, and they had to send that girl away. And maybe she had the baby and she gave it up for adoption. If she was having sex, premarital sex, or God forbid she was in any kind of adultery, women were not allowed to do that, because that was a social stigma. It was a religious stigma, it was a social stigma. But now, the first thing that happened right after hormonal birth control happened was a concentrated social effort to take away that social stigma. So now we have 42% of children born out of wedlock. We have free and legal abortion, that God knows what the statistics are on that, but I think I don't need to reiterate that too much. We have no fault divorce. We have the Duluth model of feminism. We have Title IX. We have all of these special dispensations to it's what I call the Fempowerment initiative. It was to empower females across the board, and we're still doing it today. We're still doing it in 2019. And so, unfettering all of that, I mean, we can see the result of it. So what's the solution to it? Taking away women's rights? Okay, yeah. I just don't see that as being pragmatic or feasible, because I think you're going to run in, like, I got asked this question yesterday when people said, well, are you one of these guys who's like, enjoy the decline? I'm not. I think that we should still be interested in rebuilding something that is more pro-masculine and more conventionally masculine, and getting back to these biological gender roles that have been responsible for, creating us as the apex species on this planet, right? I think that we should definitely be getting, I don't think we should be going back to that. I think we should be going forward with that. So I do recognize that the possibility of there being a complete societal collapse in the very near future. If not in my future, then certainly in the next generation, or the next maybe my daughter's generation, where there's going to be a societal collapse. Who is going to be ready to rebuild from that? Is it going to be the red pill guys? Is it going to be MGTOW? Is it going to be tradcons? Who's it going to be? Because even if you were to take away women's rights, even if you were to try to level things out, there's going to be people, including pretty much every woman in the sisterhood, who will fight you on that, and they will fight you tooth and nail. And there will be their male allies who will fight you tooth and nail. And I mean, to the point where they'd probably be willing to die for those beliefs. They're probably, because they would rather be martyrs, and they would rather be their own sacrifices and be complicit in their own extinction than to allow women to be put under the yoke of patriarchy again. And that's their thinking. I don't think it's, I think patriarchy is, there is a beneficent patriarchy, but you're never going to hear that from women right now. But I think that even if you took women's rights away, it's not going to solve the problem, because people will fight you, and that will lead to civil unrest. That will lead to conflict. That will lead to, maybe it's not going to be the same as like an all-out global war, but it's still going to be a war nonetheless, and people are going to fight you on that tooth and nail as well. So you can let the world go to hell, or you can fight it, and you're still going to be in a pretty rough spot. So what is it that you want to do? So let me see. Okay, I'm coming up on, let's see, 1 hour and 20. Oh, okay. Here we go. Did I miss any here? I probably did. Sorry. I'm not ignoring you. Okay, here we go. Thoughts? Okay. Okay, I know this guy. This is Ultra Gamer Turbo Alpha. How do you like that name? Remember we were talking about, how did you get your name? Thoughts on guys who criticize the red pill or call some guys red pill extremists? Oh, you mean like Alexander Grace? Yeah, let's just stop beating around the bush. Also, why are some afraid to debate you or argue, etc.? All right, I'll be happy to answer that. Okay, my dog is in here, so she's gonna distract me. I think that the guys who think that there is some sort of red pill extremism are they believe this for 2 reasons. The first and easiest reason is that Alexander Grace got his YouTube channel demonetized because he had, up until recently, he had been putting tags in his videos, which is manosphere, the red pill, hypergamy, all of these things that will get you flagged. I know, because I get flagged. And right about, I think it was about 2 months ago, there was a CNN article. It was a CNN video with that Asian girl who does all the sexual stuff, talks about lifestyles and shit like that. She did a piece, or a segment, I guess, on MGTOW, on a guy who was MGTOW. And as a result, Google, and consequently YouTube, decided that they were going to run an algorithm that would ban or demonetize videos that had certain tags on them. And those tags were manosphere, MGTOW, red pill, pretty much everything that I talk about, and usually the tags that I use myself. And so it was kind of like this sweep, because Alexander Grace was not just the only person who had this. Happened to like everybody in the manosphere. Like, we had a lot of our videos demonetized, just as a blanket, just as a sweeping. Like I said, it was a sweep. And so as a result of that, he was probably, I don't know for certain. I'm not sure, but I think that his YouTube channel is a primary source of his revenue. And so to get that back, to get that monetization back, he's got to sort of renounce the red pill, which is kind of sad, because it's kind of like Cypher trying to plug himself back into the matrix. It doesn't work. I know Turd Flinging Monkey has really taken him to task on a lot of his videos, and I think he probably would do a better job at sort of disassembling him than I would. But I do want, I'm glad you brought this up, because I would like to talk about the idea that the red pill is like breeding extremists or something, because that's one of the things that they said in that CNN article, is that, well, you know, these guys have trouble with their girlfriends, and then suddenly they become, you know, white nationalists, and they're out there, you know, Seek Heil, you know, and they think that it just happens like within 6 months, and that's how it is. And it's like, we don't, first of all, we don't recruit. Okay. Say, a lot of people think that the red pill is a cult because we recruit like a cult. And I'm like, we don't recruit. We don't have ads. You have to find the red pill. You have to look for the red pill. I mean, God forbid, the 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 red pill sub on Reddit is quarantined just because of that, because they don't want you to find it, but people still find it. People still look for that stuff because they're looking for answers. And they want to say, well, there's a dogma, there's a doctrine to it. No, there isn't. You can always call in the Red Man group. You can always counter me on my own blog. I have always had, I pride myself on an unmoderated comment section on every blog I've had for the last 8 years. All these people who seem to think that they have some sort of problem with Rollo Tomassi, these are people who I've never heard of before. So if they want to say, well, I disagree about, you know, something about hypergamy, okay, fine, lay it out, put it in the chat, call in, put a comment in. You know, if there's something that you disagree about in anything that I've ever written or I've ever done, the line's always open. And these guys don't do that. And the reason that they don't do that is because they are trying to make a name for themselves. They're trying to put themselves up because they need to hit the biggest guy in the yard. It's like when you go to prison, you go and you hit the biggest guy because you want people to take you seriously. And so whenever I have a disagreement with these guys, it's almost never about like specific things. It's always about who I am and how I'm delivering it, or what I'm doing. Right? It's never about, well, I disagree about alpha and beta. Okay, well, that's a debate we can have. Like people say, well, how come you won't debate Pat Stedman? How come you won't debate Alex? Oh, okay, I'll debate you on what? Tell me what the subject of the debate is, and I will be happy to debate you. But they never do. They just want to say, oh, let's just get them together in a room and let them fight. That's what they want to do. It's like YouTube blood sports. I forget, the guy Andy something or other was doing that for a while. But I mean, it's like, let's get these two violently opposed ideologues, and let's see what they say when they get together in the same room, right? And oh, it's great TV, you know, it's great indignation. I'm not about indignation. I would like to solve problems. I would like to help guys live better lives, and I would like guys to stop killing themselves for easily understandable reasons. So when it comes to debate, tell me what you want to debate. Do you want to debate the how hypergamy is? You want to debate, you know, alpha and beta? You want to debate whatever? I don't care. But they never do. It's always, I just want to debate Rollo Tomassi. Okay, what? Yeah. Oh, and I should say this about Alexander Grace as well, is he gets into this idea. He likes to promote this idea that like the red pill is all about extremes and stuff, but then he gets himself into trouble because he makes all these stupid presumptions about what he thinks the red pill is about. He's not educated enough to know that the points or the counterpoints that he thinks he's bringing up have already been addressed a long time ago. So when guys say, well, hypergamy is just about marrying up, no, it's not. And you know what? I've got 4 or 5 different articles where I've expressed exactly why I think that's not the way. And you know what? You didn't say anything about it on those. It's just intellectual laziness. That's all it is like, I have anybody who has a problem with anything I have to say about hypergamy, and people say, oh, you just say hypergamy all the time, like that's your standard default answer. If you have a problem with hypergamy, go and look at the essay that I have called Hypergamy, the Misconceptions, and look at that and see if I haven't already addressed your concern. Okay. I've talked about pretty much any concern that guys have ever had about hypergamy. So if you're going to debate me about hypergamy, go read that first, because I'll guarantee you've already addressed it. All right. Oh, I got my dog here again. I got my dog. Come here. Come say hi. Come say hi. Oops, my bad. Okay, here we go. Ah, Henry. Okay. Henry's like bumping my arm. Okay. Bobby the doctor. I'm going to do this for probably another 20 minutes here. I'm late. I'm late 30s. Great job. Below average at game. Raised very blue pill. How plus where should I learn game? I have your books. Roosh V seems like a tool. Um, you know what? I'm not going to badmouth Roosh, particularly when it comes to game. People have said a lot of good things about his new book called Game. I kind of have, again, I love Roosh and I hate Roosh. It just depends on what it is that we're talking about. Um, I think that if you want to learn game, there's some guys that you want me to give you my kosher, my stamp of approval. I think that Nick Krauser is a good guy to learn game from. I think, let's see, Kyle Trouble was a good guy to learn game from. Uh, Christian McQueen, although Christian's really more about business these days than he is really about game. I think that's kind of a shame because he's always been really good at game. Goldman Unleashed is a really great source for game. But remember this is that game and red pill are mutually beneficial. Like I always look at the red pill as the theory, and I look at game as the practice, and one informs the other, and one is incomplete without the other. So if you just have red pill and all you do is just sit all day and read my books and all you ever do is read and don't do anything, well, that's bad. And if all you ever do is just game and learn scripts and learn rote memorization of how to go pick up girls, and you never really understand red pill in terms of real social dynamics, unless you have a grasp of real intersexual dynamics between men and women, and you understand and you are red pill aware, your game will end up getting you into trouble. So those are some things to think of. But thank you for the chat anyways. Redman Anon again. Thank you for another $5 chat. Could you please talk about your BPD experience and how exactly she made you feel negatively that you became an Omega? How did you heal from that damage? Oh God. You know what? This is like this. Whenever I talk about my BPD X, I kind of get that kind of like that eye twitch, It's like I don't like to really even think about who I was back then because I wasn't the same guy. I've told my wife on several occasions, I said, if you knew me back when I had just broken up with my BPD, you would not have ever had anything to do with me, because I was a different person. I was talking about this with Pat just a little while ago. That's what BPDs do, is they change you into somebody that you never were. That's part of BPD, is they make you the source of their problems, and that if you could just change, their problems would change and their problems would get better. God, last time I eat before I do this. Anyways, so when I met my BPD girlfriend, I was I just come out of like my second band. I was in probably one of the most popular bands I'd ever been in the Hollywood metal scene, and so I had a lot going for me. I had a lot of girlfriends. I always talk about how like my notch count is like 40 plus, right? And a lot of those notches came during the times I was like, say 21 till I was about 24. But and then of course that was a time when I met my BPD girlfriend and everything went to shit because I felt bad. She made me feel bad for being popular. She made me feel bad for other women who wanted to have sex with me. She made me feel bad for all of these things that I was successful for. And I mean, successful from a social perspective. I mean, I was sure shit wasn't for the money. I'll tell you that. But I had a lot of social proof, and I had a lot of pre-selection, and I had a lot of other things going for me. And then I met her, and she ended up becoming my ideal. Like I had this, like Warren Farrell calls this the genetic celebrity. And what that is that it's this ideal that guys get in their head is like, what's the perfect chick for them? And I think that it's almost too easy today to really fixate on the perfect girl, because we have Instagram and we have all this, all this really easy access to our fantasies, and we can live it. People are ready to sell us our fantasies whenever. So anyway, she fit that. She was blonde haired, blue eyes, perfect body, not too big of tits, but that's because I'm not a boob guy. So, but it was just like, it was absolutely the perfect storm. And she was crazy fun in bed. She was the first chick that was like ready to just go crazy rock star, porn star sex, right, with me. And it was fantastic. And you got to understand, like, I had gone from being this really kind of beta high school kid who couldn't get laid, to going through an LTR at a year and a half LTR with my first girlfriend who ever had sex with me. And that you don't even want to hear about that. You want to talk about a real bad situation. I got out of that, and then I had made a complete 180. I had gone from being this kind of washout beta loser to playing in the Hollywood rock scene, really kind of living out my rock and roll fantasies, right? And I had access to women like I had never had access before. And I learned how to play the game, and I learned how to get what I wanted, which was to have sex with beautiful women. And we didn't call it game back then because we didn't have anything like that. But I learned how to get laid, and I learned how to get laid with increasingly better, higher SMV women, one after the next after the next. And she was really up there. She was one, but she was also crazy. And that's one of the reasons why I tell guys that, like my essay, and it's a chapter in the book called Dream Girls and Children with Dynamite. I was a child with dynamite, really, at that time. Is like, I knew how to get laid. I had everything, aligned, so I could go in to a club on a Friday night and I could walk out with pretty much any girl that I wanted to have. And that was a problem, is I could have any girl I wanted to have, meaning that I didn't know enough about women or enough to guard myself against BPD. Well, we didn't even know what BPD was. It was just a chick being a psycho bitch. That was what they call them. We call them psycho bitches from hell. That's what they were called. And I can remember I had a buddy of mine who had I want to say probably slept with that girl, with my BPD girl, but this guy was he was sort of an ex-boyfriend of hers. And he said, stay away from her. She's crazy. And I thought, oh, she's crazy. Haha, we just say crazy about everything. But he meant it. He meant she is clinically crazy. She was clinically fucked up in the head. And of course, I didn't believe that because I was having fun with her and it was great sex, but she was crazy in bed and she was crazy out of bed. And she was crazy jealous. And I mean, jealous to the point where, and I'd never had a girl do this to me before, but she was technically physically abusive. She would dig her nails into my forearms because she was so pissed off that other women might find me attractive, or that like I might be attracted or aroused by another woman. So rather than, and sometimes she would try to prove that to me by like having this crazy marathon sex with me. And then other times she would just lose her shit and throw things and take off. And she was a real piece of work, man. She's a real piece of work. But how did I get out of that? How did I heal from that? I think I've told this story before. There was a time when she was in her dorm room, and it was towards the end of our relationship, and we had just had this knockdown, drag out fight. And again, the same old thing. I mean, it got to the point where I was like falling asleep on the phone because we kept having the same conversations over and over and over again. And remember, this is a time when there was no cell phones. But she would like have these tantrums, and then she would just leave me alone. Right. And one of these times I was sitting in the sort of living room of the dorm that she was at. And I looked at the door to her bedroom, and I looked at the door to leave, to leave the apartment. And I looked at that and I go, I got a choice of two doors that I can go to right now. I can take this door and put up with this bitch and try to untangle this chick's head case, and maybe things will get better in the future. Maybe if she just, wakes up, or maybe if we got married, or maybe if we had a kid, or maybe if we did this, and like all these horrible, horrible ideas that I know now are horrible ideas. But all this shit was like sort of running through my head, and like, or I can just get out of this shit and go back to, being me again. And so that's what I did. And I ended up moving, I actually ended up moving away from Los Angeles, and I ended up moving up to Northern California. And then it's history from there. But how did I heal from that? It took a long time, man. I mean, it took a long time. You have these dreams, man. When you stop dreaming about somebody, I think that's when you're over them. And whenever I used to, I don't have any dreams about her anymore, but I can remember having dreams about her and just kind of like waking up in a cold sweat thinking like, like that nervousness that she used to give me was something that, like an anxiety or something that I would have to like actually dream about. And then I'd wake up and I go, oh, thank God it's over. It's that same thing like in what was that song? Thank God it's over. It's Limp Bizkit had one. That would be a good outline for that. That's a good question. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna do it's now 5 o'clock here on the West Coast. I'm gonna do one more. Let me see what I got left in the queue here. Excuse me. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one. I got this at the Man in Demand conference. Chuck says, "Is it true that you wrote the Book of Pook?" God, no, I did not write the Book of Pook. Pook. If you don't know who Pook is, you should know who Pook is. If you want any like real street cred when it comes to the manosphere, you have to read the Book of Pook. I think that some of his stuff is not 100% red pill, but a lot of it is, and it's the foundation. Particularly if you like moralism, if you're like kind of like one of these moral kind of guys, you'll probably like Pook. Pook was a commenter on the SoSwab forum at the same time that I was a moderator on the SoSwab forum, and he used to write some pretty intense, multi-threaded comment threads, or forum threads, and he would really get involved. Pook is kind of an acquired taste because he's very prosaic in the way he talks, but the lessons that he teaches are really good. Like I said, not all of them are 100% spot on, but I think that most of them are, and I think he's probably almost a religious figure, if you want to call it religious, in the manosphere, if you know who Pook is. And you will only find his work on soswav.net. Go look up soswav.net. That's my oldest forum. You can even look up my name on the SoSwav forums, and then you'll find a lot of my old posts. I mean, old posts from back in 2002. So okay, here's I'm just going to do one last one here. Thoughts on Tom Likas? Never heard anyone debate the red pill with mainstream audience as expertly as Tom. Yes, I agree. And Tom was one of my earliest influences as well. I'm not going to lie. I remember listening to, I never was a guy who liked talk radio. I hated talk radio for a very long time. And then we had 9/11, and I suddenly became a talk radio junkie because I was trying to get news. I was trying to, because that was how you did it back then. It wasn't, the internet wasn't what it is today. And so as a result, I was listening to probably some stations I never would have encountered otherwise. And then I started listening to Tom Likas. I'm like, who is this guy? And then when I first started hearing him, he kind of like rubbed me the wrong way because I was still kind of blue pill. And he was talking, he had this series of girls on his show. It was a terrestrial radio show. And these series of girls would call in and say how they love to give their boyfriends blowjobs, but all of the women were married and they all have boyfriends. And it was just like how, and I was like, this guy's like the anti-Oprah, he's like the polar opposite of Oprah. And I love Tom. I would very much love to get on his show, although I think he's retiring. If he didn't retire last year, he's retiring this year. I'm not sure if he's completely out of the business right now. But I'm not going to lie. Pat Campbell and we really like Tom Likas. And if he and I ever did something like, mainstream collaborative, I think I could see us doing something like that. Maybe not the same delivery as Tom. I don't think that. I think Tom had to be outrageous, because he had to spark indignation and he had to get that rush from people, to have a decent radio show. I mean, that's just the mechanics of radio. You have to have something that's going to be engaging, and there's nothing as engaging as indignation, and that's what he did. I love Tom Likas. He taught me a lot, actually, and not just about like talk radio, but also about like intersexual dynamics. It was kind of the perfect storm when I came across him, because I was studying psychology at university at the time. I was listening to him. I was doing peer counseling with guys who were like 60 years old, and here I was like in my early 30s. And then I was also a moderator for So Suave. And so you want to know how I became Rollo Tomassi? That's really kind of how it happened. It was Tom Likas, So Suave, a little bit of alt fast seduction and some of the early game guys, and behavioral psychology, and working in that field. So, oh God, is there one more here? Thank you, everybody who has contributed to a super chat today. Sorry, I'm reading them with preference. I should be reading. If you're on one of my Patreon followers, in fact, I think I should probably just do some housekeeping here. If you're one of my Patreon followers, just say, hey, I'm a Patreon follower, and then I'll try to look at your message first, because I want to kind of help these guys out. You can follow me on Patreon, or I'm at Rollo Tomassi. You'll find me. It's actually in the description. I also take crypto. I have a crypto account now. I actually got this neat little treasure right here, which is kind of cool. People said you shouldn't be on Coinbase, so I took all my assets off of Coinbase and put them on this little treasure now. But I do have an address, and you can contribute if you would like. I think that's probably the safest way these days. I am on Patreon. I am on PayPal, but I would prefer crypto only because that is probably the easiest way to do things. Hope you guys have enjoyed this. I will be on tomorrow with Rich Cooper. I'm going to fill in for Sean Smith, because he's out, but Rich does this series called Before the Train Wreck, and he tries to help married guys and tries to help guys who are contemplating divorce, or just like, want to know what they can, it's basically for middle-aged guys. I've read the red pill for middle-aged guys. Let's see. Would I interview Roosh? Yes, I would have. In fact, we've tried. I think Anthony has tried at least on a couple times. I know Rich has reached out to him. I don't think it would be a debate so much as it would be just like a talk. People always think, oh, why don't you debate Roosh, or why don't you debate Jordan Peterson? Well, it wouldn't be a debate. There's a lot that we agree about, and there's a lot that we would disagree about. And I think that we would just have to simply focus on the stuff that we didn't agree about. For all of Jordan Peterson's, being owned by CAA these days. You want another prediction? I'll give you a prediction right now. Here's a Rollo Tomassi prediction for 2019. I guarantee you that Jordan Peterson will have his own daytime talk show, kind of like Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz will be handing off the cape and scepter to Jordan Peterson. So bet on that. I will guarantee you that he does that, and in doing so, he will march back a lot of what he's talked about in the past. So there, you can take that to the bank. Would I unblock you from Twitter, please? Don't know why you blocked me. I don't even know who you are, brother. Sorry. Would love to see you chat with Roosh. I would love to chat with Roosh too. I would like to do that. The only problem I ever had with Roosh was when he was kind of fronting the neo-masculinity thing, and I think he really kind of got into that because it was the election cycle. And I also think that he was getting, and I know this for a fact, is that he was getting into a long-term relationship at that point. And a lot of guys, and I'll leave with this point, a lot of guys will, I'm not going to mention names, but a lot of guys who are in the red pill community, when they get a long-term girlfriend, when they finally find a way to use the red pill to sort of make their blue pill ideals come true, when they get a girlfriend, that's when they have a lot of trouble reconciling what they were talking about just a few years before being a, red pill luminary. And now they have to find a way to march it back. They have to find a way to make it fit in with their lifestyle, because it's like that cognitive dissonance. And so what they do is then they delete their Twitter account and they delete their blogs, and then they come back as somebody different. And like a good example would be, I'm just going to throw this out there, like, let's just say Tucker Max. Okay. Tucker Max was a guy who was known for his outrageous, I want to say almost red pill shenanigans when he was in college. And then, he knocked a girl up, married her, and now he is the new Tucker, the purple pill Tucker Max, who it was decided that, all that stuff that he did before was just so deplorable. And now he wants to make amends and go on public TV and say that he's sorry. Well, that's an extreme way of doing it, but there's less extreme ways of doing that as well. One of those is sort of like denying that you ever existed as a previous person in the red pill community. And then maybe after you break up with the girl, you want to come back to that community and decide that, hey, look, I'm back, kind of thing. And I really think that that's kind of what Roosh did. I think Roosh decided he wanted to change his song and to change his sort of narrative a little bit when he was getting old. Well, I'm getting older then. And this election cycle was going around, and a lot of guys were getting into, a lot of the red pill guys started doing politics. That's when they saw where the bread was being buttered. Cernovich was like that. Cernovich wants to come back to the red pill, I think, too. But like back then, he had gone from being a red pill regular to being, citizen journalist. And then now that that's kind of a bust, they want to rekindle that old red pill, notoriety that they thought they had, but really they don't anymore because they left it. I never left the red pill, and a lot of the guys that I interact with never left the red pill. We've never called the red pill anything other than intersexual dynamics. It's never been about politics. It's always been about, when I was on So Suave, I can show you posts from 2002 on So Suave where we use the term red pill. That's where it came from. And you got the guys that in the MRAs wanting to name their documentaries that and just sort of use it as a loose brand because it has brand name recognition. So anyways, I would love to have a talk with Roosh. I would like to stick to intersexual dynamics, but that'd probably be about it. Okay. Anyways, I gotta go. My dogs are getting really hungry. Thank you guys for watching. Oh, is my hat super glued? No, it's not super glued to my head. It's interesting. Let me tell you something. Before I go. Why is it that a guy like Tim Pool can wear a beanie on every fucking video he's ever done? And how is it that a guy like Goldman never takes off his hat? Nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit about that. And I forget who the other guy was who wears a beanie all the time. Anyways, anybody. But if I wear a beanie, I got cancer. Come on, man. Don't worry. You've seen me without my hat on before. This is like, first of all, this is like style. And the next thing I hear, because you watch this all the way to the end, I'm going to give you a little bit of truth. I'm actually growing. You can see it right here. I'm actually growing out my hair right now. So I'm actually growing it a little bit longer. It's not going to be AJ Cortez long. Don't worry. But I decided to grow it out a little bit, and it looks like shit right now. I'm sorry. I'm in that kind of awkward phase with my hair where it's like I look like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. So no, I'm good. And then the other thing is I'm used to just wearing it all the time. I always wear a beanie, or I always wear a hat anyways, just because that's the style that we have going on. Like if you hung out with the people that I do, when I go sledding, you would understand. But anyways, all right, guys. Thank you for this. Check us out tomorrow. Look at my Twitter feed for tomorrow's show with Rich. I'm going to start doing a regular YouTube channel. Maybe it'll be just stuff like this. It seemed like everybody really liked the interview with Tate. I don't even really call it an interview. It was just us bullshit. And so I think I might do another bullshit session with like somebody else. And just talk about things back and forth. I would like to do something that's going to help guys out. I'm doing Red Pill 101 with Pat now because I want people to have sort of access to like remedial stuff. Like if you're new to the Red Pill, that's your show. I want you guys to watch that because I'll cover all of the things like in the first book and second book too in that. So be sure that you check out Red Pill 101. I am on every Friday morning on Pat Campbell's terrestrial radio show. If you want notifications for that, I'm sorry. The only way you can get that is if you follow me on Twitter, and then you will see the notifications that I put out. It's always on Friday mornings at 9:05 Eastern, and it is on AM 1170. I usually post the live link in my Twitter. And the Redman group will be on again. We're moving the Redman group to 11 a.m. Eastern on Saturday mornings, just because it's like a pain in the ass for me to get up that early, honestly. Okay, so anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching this, and watch for me tomorrow on Rich's channel. Go ahead and hit the like button, hit the notifications button, subscribe to me on Patreon. What else do I have to do? Okay. Anyways, that's it. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.